It's common knowledge that having the right habits and mindsets can be transformational in how we live our lives. But among the sea of advice online, it's tough to know who to trust with these important life decisions. At The Standard, we try to answer that question and introduce you to some of the most successful people in the world in their fields and the mindsets and habits they've used to achieve their success. To find out more about our social platform, please head over to thestandardapp.com. And now on to the show, your host, myself, Chris Pallatroni. All right. Well, welcome to the Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Pallatroni, and founder and CEO of The Standard. I have a wonderful guest today. She has been in the beauty industry for 20 plus years. She has dominated the ranks at Max Cosmetics. After having her second kid, she quit her job after 15 plus years to become a stay-at-home mom for a handful of years. And in 2016, about 5 years after that, she decided to get into freelance career as a pro makeup artist. She went from a local nobody to the number one pro artist in Sonoma County, California. In 2020, she started content creation on Instagram and TikTok. In 2021, she joined the Sephora Squad, which is an ambassador program. As an entrepreneur, she started building her brand around that time. And most recently, this month, joined an elite list of Sephora Squad mentors. She is a boy mom times 2. She is an amazing wife and so much more. All around an amazing human being. As she would say, she is sort of the man on the street. Wickedly funny, and by far my better half. And our guest today is Stefanie Fritz Pallatroni. Hi, Stefanie.
Ooh, hi, Chris. I'm so excited to be your first guest here on your podcast. I hope everybody knows that it was my idea that he should start a podcast. He likes to say I'm really spicy, and I am. And I love, love, love chatting with Chris. He is wickedly smart and he's so insightful. And I just can't wait to see you thrive in this new arena.
Well, thank you for that. And everybody, it was her idea to start a podcast. And we've been talking about doing a podcast, either you building a show or me building a show for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years now.
I'm going to draft that when you figure it all out.
Oh, totally. I'll just tell you everything that I've learned and you can just do it right from the get-go. So yeah, couldn't be more excited. This is our very first episode and couldn't imagine a better person to do it with than you. Obviously, this show is all about habits and mindsets and routines. And so this is a topic that you and I have talked a lot about over our 24 years of being together, but certainly over the last 3 years, we've talked a lot about it as I've been building this company. And so I'd love you to share a little bit with the audience, like how do you even think about this topic? Like, why are habits and routines just so important to you?
I personally think that habits and routines are a really integral part to my overall happiness. And I know that doesn't sound like when you hear about habits and routines, I don't think that the majority of people like associate that with something that's really fun. But it is fun to me because there's just this constant evolution of tweaking things and kind of becoming more efficient. And as I become more efficient, I feel like there's like this mental burden that's lifted off of my brain that actually allows me to feel happier as a person. So whilst it's super nerdy and I haven't always been a really habits driven person, I think that spending a little bit of time figuring out how habits can make you happier is fun. And that also makes me a huge nerd.
Well, I don't think it makes you a huge nerd. Is there a specific time when habits and like really trying to develop better ones or kick the bad ones to the curb? Is there a certain time in your life where that really started to pick up for you? I mean, I know we talk a lot about productivity today, but I think that's more because you're trying to build a brand and you're an entrepreneur and you've got a lot going on. But is there a time when you really started to notice a shift in the way you looked at them and really started to optimize them?
Yeah, for sure. I think honestly, once I became a mom, which is really wild because I think I'm 44 right now. I think me even thinking about developing habits or even good ones, or recognizing if I had bad ones. This didn't even start to dawn on me until I was about 35 or 36. Having children, I've always been kind of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of person, like deadline to deadline, at times paycheck to paycheck. Like, you're just out there floating, doing everything the best that you can. And the idea of having a routine, something that, you might do over and over again, didn't really dawn on me actually until I quit my job at Mac, and I was working full time as a regional sales manager, and I had a baby and a 2-year-old at home. And I was the stay at home mom whose day was so long and monotonous. And I really kind of leaned in. In fact, the first habits that I ever researched were on Pinterest. And it was like, what's the routine of a stay at home mom? I had never had that much time on my hands before. And I don't know, there was like all these morning cleaning routines and morning afternoon routines. And to be honest with you, as wild as it sounds, I just wanted to break up my day and create a little bit of structure, because I felt like with a baby and a 2-year-old, it was just this, I don't know how to describe it, just this thing that just kept going over and over again without any like point of differentiation. I don't think I'm saying that very good. But anyways, it was just a way to kind of break up my day. And so that was probably the first time. And since then, I've actually developed so many habits, and I've been trying to break bad ones. And now I'm starting to ramble. What was your question again?
No. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't even think we were making our bed prior to like having kids. And so
Yeah.
I do remember you talking a lot about this day just never ends, as a stay-at-home mom, which is really the role you were playing before you got into your pro makeup artistry. Was you just woke up a mom and you went to bed a mom, and like it was just a continuation of your job 24/7. You would even say like, at least you get off your job. I'm
Yeah.
on this 24/7, 365. And so I think you were looking for ways to sort of chop up that day in a more meaningful way. And I mean, clearly I'm part of the morning routine here. We make the bed, we do the chores, there's certain like structure to that. And I think you gained a little bit of peace by having that structure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think even something as simple as making your bed is actually, like, thank you for that trigger, a really good one, because, I'm one of those people who, not even kidding, until I was about 35, did not make my bed every day. In fact, I said the sentence, "What is the point? You're just going to get back in it,"
Within
which
it.
is
Totally.
absolutely wild. And, I remember that part of this stay at home mom routine. There was like this morning collection of, kind of like cleaning or tidying up that I still do to this day, that I've now roped you into, even though you don't really know that you got roped into it from Pinterest. But, one of those things was making your bed. And I didn't realize at the time that that was like a keystone habit to setting yourself up for success in so many other ways. But I did get hooked on how good it felt to start my day and walk back in that room and see it nice and tidy and that bed made. I just felt this small sense of accomplishment. And I started to kind of crave that feeling, that little like, okay, oh, good job, Steph. You did it. This room looks really clean when you go in it. Okay, cool. You get a gold star now. Like, what other gold stars can I get?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're going to dive into your habits, but for all of you listening, making your bed absolutely is a keystone habit. And I forget the gentleman's name, but there is a famous general that at a commencement speech gave a beautiful speech on habits and changing the world. And he sort of ended it with, if you want to make a difference and change the world, start with making your bed, for all the reasons you mentioned, which is it gives you that really early in the day sense of satisfaction of like, I accomplished something. Shit, if I can make my bed, what else can I do today? And so yeah, very much change the world, make your bed. So let's dive into like, and I don't know what these are, because I know I sent you these questions ahead of time, but I don't know what you're actually going to say here. But when you think of like the best habit you have
Yeah.
or the best mindset you have, like what is the one that comes to mind that really has contributed to your success, your mental health?
Oh, that is so easy. In fact, I think you actually would know what I'm going to say is waking up before the rest of my family, waking up early is absolutely the best decision that I have ever made in my whole entire life. And so many people think that I am insane for how early I get up every day, other than probably you, because I also roped you into that. So waking up early is okay. So let me back up a little bit, back to this mom life situation. I was a mom. So I have a video actually on the standard that goes over my morning routine and me getting up early. So I'm not going to like steal thunder from my own video, but there, I was a person who would stay up after the kids went to bed with my husband, who happens to be the host of this podcast, and we would watch TV together. It was our time alone at the end of the day, and we would turn on TV, and I would snuggle up next to him and almost immediately fall asleep on his shoulder, which was like some of the best sleep I ever got. And we'd sit out there for 45 minutes and eventually make it to bed, where I'd get woken up in the middle of the night by short people, and then I'd be so tired. And then in the morning, I'd get woken up by short people who were so sweet, but immediately wanted something. They wanted cereal. They wanted TV. They were like so young and kind of helpless still that they immediately needed my attention. And I am not a person who skips out of bed super cheerful. Like, you really don't want to have a conversation with me until I've like had at least halfway through my coffee. And I was just starting off my day so agitated because I was getting woken up, I guess, against my will, and then immediately like springing into action. And it made me so irate all the time. I was just feeling kind of bitter. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it was really, really apparent to me. And it's also like, not like I was, there are people, I think okay. So one thing you should know about me is I know a lot of sayings, but I will never say them right, like quotes and things like that. So just bear with me. But I read one time in a, Gretchen Rubin book that there's like two kinds of people. There's owls and there's larks, and owls are people who are really productive into the nighttime. So, you might be the reverse of me, but I am not a person who is super productive. I mean, literally, I would immediately fall asleep on Chris. I wouldn't really quantify that as productive. And then there are people who get up really early in the morning and they're really productive. So I'm definitely a lark. So anyways, I remember, hearing, it was actually in a Rachel Hollis book where she suggested waking up a half hour earlier than your family every day. And if you did that and you kind of developed a morning routine for yourself, that you would be so much happier. And I remember thinking like, okay, well, my family wakes up at 6, that's 5:30 in the morning. Why not try it? Because it's not like I'm not already super tired. Like, what did I have to lose? I couldn't imagine being any more tired at that point. So I woke up at 5:30 in the morning. Chris was not on board with this yet. He likes to say he was, but he wasn't. And I would go get in the living room and I'd get my cup of coffee and I'd sit down, and it made me feel very in control to have that quiet and have that peace. And then when that door opened and a little one came running down the hallway, I was already up. It was like I was on the offense, not the defense, Yeah, that one. And so I loved that time so much that I kept rolling it further and further backward. Like, I loved it so much that then I started waking up at 5. I started waking up at 4:30. I eventually settled on 4. And then people usually immediately say, well, what time do you go to bed? And I go to bed around 8:15. All I'm really missing is now I'm not falling asleep on Chris's shoulder on the couch. I'm falling asleep on his shoulder in my actual bed. It's really not any different. And it's the best time in my day. I realize I gave you a monologue.
No, that's great. I was hoping to capture the why you do it, which I think is so critical. And I remember when we actually released that initial video through social media just to see like how people would react to it. I mean, people resonated exactly with you, especially all the moms out there that were just raising their hand like, yeah, me too. Like, oh my God, this was so inspirational. Maybe we can take a look at so I think you did a good job of explaining the why you do this. Let's get a little bit more granular just to make sure that people really understand what this is about. So how do you set yourself up for success to wake up this early? Like, what does that look like? Let's start with the how, because clearly what you're doing is, and so for those of you that don't know, we actually wake up or set our alarms for 3:30 in the morning.
That's Chris.
That's me.
That half hour really puts us into Crazyville, I think. I think I was consistently waking up at 4. He started joining me at 4. And then somehow he got into this 3:30 thing, which is really wild. And actually, I think it's too much. But, at the end of the day, currently, I didn't start off this way, but currently he's bringing me a cup of coffee around 3:45, 3:50. So who am I to complain? I'm not actually waking up at 3:30, but that's a little bit of a digression. So the thing is that people were like, well, how could you wake up so early? I'm so tired. I think that you really have to find your why. Like, my initial why was, I just don't want to feel angry first thing in the morning. My kids don't deserve that. It's not their fault that they're waking up and want to see their mom, and I want to be a good mom for them. And I don't want to feel so cranky. So literally on the first morning of waking up and having that cup of coffee, I felt in such a better mood that I was honestly instantly hooked. I was such not in a good place before that I immediately went to bed that night and thought to myself, I can't wait to wake up tomorrow morning like that. That was such a better start to my day. So it wasn't hard because there was an instantaneous shift in my mood. And then so once I kind of established like, okay, I'm getting up at 5:30, it wasn't hard for me to just set my alarm. Yes, we have a coffee machine that we can prep ahead of time, but there wasn't a whole lot for me to prep. I just was so excited to get up because I had a why, and that was just to feel like a happier person. Once I kind of decided like, okay, you're going to actually keep getting up at 5:30, what do you want to do with this period of time? What's important to you? That is honestly it's a constant evolution. I think at first, because waking up early came to me in the source of a book and somebody else's recommendation, I also took that person's recommendation, which was Rachel Hollis at the time. Like if you start looking up morning routine, miracle morning, there's so many shenanigans out there as to like what you can do at this time. You can meditate, you can journal, you can do a Bible study, you can practice gratitude, like you can do all these things. And I actually did try to do some of those things, but none of them felt like me. None of them gave me the juice that I wanted. Now, at that time, I was a makeup artist and a stay-at-home mom, and I was at the very beginning of thinking about starting to create content and build my business. And during the day, I just didn't have that time. The amount of time that I was spent working, I was with clients. So where was I getting any time to foster this new thing that was important to me? Well, it was that morning time. And I quickly realized that a half hour wasn't enough time. I really wanted to give myself an hour. So then I shifted it to 5 a.m. And then I also realized that I really like working out in the morning because I'm full of excuses. And if I wait till the end of the day to work out, I just won't do it. So I also wanted to squeeze in a workout, which if I squeezed in a workout, then I wouldn't get to my content creation, like development time. So that is really where 4 o'clock in the morning came. So I pretty much wake up at 4. I work on it shifts what I work on, but like usually it has to do with my work and I'm really focused. And then around 5:30, I'll go work out until about 6:30 or 7. And then I come home and start my day. And I'm such a happier person when those things happen.
Yeah, I'm going to fill in a couple blanks here too, because I think in the how you do it, I think you glazed over a little bit in the fact that like you really do set yourself up for success. I know you said, hey, I go to bed at 8:15, but like there's a lot to be said about that. I mean, back in the day, before kids, we were making dinner at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night.
Right.
And so we've really shifted all the things that we do to be earlier. Now dinner's around 6 o'clock, so we're not eating so close to bedtime. Be it summertime or winter. I mean, we're on point in terms of like we're putting the house down at 8 o'clock, and between 8 and 8:30 is when we'll fall asleep. But there are a lot of things that you're doing to set yourself up to give yourself that opportunity to get that 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Because as we well know, if you don't do that, like it becomes very challenging to wake up so early in the morning.
Yeah.
So I think that was a little bit of part of it. But the fact that you chose and you figured out like why you're doing it, I think is so critical. And the other thing that I think is really powerful here is the fact that there was a lot of trial and error. Like what works for one person does not necessarily work for another. And I do remember you trying, let's go through the journal session and maybe that's it. And maybe let's try some meditation and, let's try working, let's try exercise. And you do have to continue to experiment with those things until you find the right sequence of events that works well for you. And I think you do have a good sequence at this point. You did leave out that you play the Wordle first thing in the day.
Yeah, the Wordle is actually, if you don't know what the Wordle is, you can Google it, but it is a New York Times situation. It's like a little brain exercise. It's super nerdy, but the Wordle is the first thing that I do every day. I like to say that it sets the tone for my day. You only get 6 guesses to get the word right. I felt incredible about myself if I get it in like 2 or 3 guesses. 4 is acceptable. 5 or 6 is like really like this day could be taking a turn. And if I miss the Wordle, I fully believe that my entire day is going to be ruined.
Yeah, just go back to sleep, right? So like the Wordle is almost like another version of making the bed. It's like one of the first things, and it doesn't hurt that, your amazing husband just makes you coffee and just sets it right next to your bedside every morning, and you just wake up to a nice hot cup of coffee.
Okay, I'm going to pause because okay, so one of the questions that I got, I'm going to pause you on your coffee making and your amazing husbandness is, okay, so we've taken turns. There were times in life where Chris got up really early and then he slept. And then when I started this morning routine, I want to say I was in it for a good 6 months. And you can remember this however you want to, but I was in it for like a good 6 months before he signed off. And so I remember being like, okay, I'm going to go to bed now. And you were still watching TV and you're like, okay, well, I'll come in there in a little bit. And I remember other women asking me, how are you doing this? Like, this is the only time that I have to spend with my husband. How are you making it work? Because I feel like if I make that decision, I'm missing out on that time with him. And I only had to experience that for about 6 months, but we made a specific point to have coffee together in the morning, and not that first cup of coffee, but have coffee in the morning and have like some connection there. We would have dinner early as a family and spend some time together after dinner. I mean, I do think if you are running in that scenario, date nights or any kind of dates, one-on-one time together, you have to be a bit more intentional. And I don't know if you'd admit this or not, but I think he saw that like I was making it rain first thing in the morning. I was so cheerful. I was getting all this stuff done, and he was not too far behind me, like 6 months. He's like, I think I'm going to start getting up early with you, and I'm like, okay. And so somehow or another, I lucked out that my love language is acts of service. So anytime anybody does anything for me, I'm like really into you. And he started making me a cup of coffee in the morning, which was incredible. And yes, I am very lucky, but I most certainly started doing that on my own without his support, but that definitely makes it easier. But I do think that with any habit or something that you do that you are just like infectiously happy and passionate about, the people in your life are going to want to know what you're doing. I have a really good friend who also thought I was a lunatic waking up in the middle of the night. And now she wakes up at 4 a.m. And like, we're not in the same house. Nobody's making her a cup of coffee, but she realizes that as a mom of 3 kids, like this leads you to so much joy. And I think when you start to experience that, people around you want to know like, okay, well, what's in your Kool-Aid? How do I get some of that? So, Chris is included in the Kool-Aid.
This is a true fact, everybody. She was waking up before me, and I did completely draft behind her on this one. So also, fun fact, do you remember what we would call our coffee sessions in the morning?
The Pentagon?
It is. It was we called it the Pentagon because we do a debriefing for the day, right? We talk about the kids and how our days were going to go about and so forth. So I think that's a great recap. So you wake up at 4-ish.
So I wake up at 4-ish, Wordle. I am handed a cup of coffee, which is incredible. I will also say that I'm really passionate about coffee as a person. There are a lot of things that I don't indulge in financially, but I do have a really nice coffee machine, and it makes my cup of coffee like filled with joy, and it's made for me and handed to me. So, like I said, I did run solo, but that helps. And then, I will say that the common theme has been that I do work. What that work is has changed. And that kind of probably starts to shift over to mindset a little bit. But there's this book, which I took very little from, minus the title. Chris is smiling because he knows I'm about to misquote something. But it's called, is it Eat the Frog or Eat That Frog? Eat the Frog. Eat the Frog?
I think it's Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. Yeah.
Whatever. Okay. So see, there you go. The point of that book was get through the hard thing in your day. Whatever the thing is that you know you need to do, but you don't want to do it first. So for a really long time, I was doing a bunch of crap that had to do with other people. Like so I am a content creator. There's a lot of little nuances and kind of weird things that I will do. So what I would do is I would answer every single email that was sent to me. I would respond to DMs. I'd respond to all my comments in my community on both platforms. And I would do all these kind of tedious little things that involved me getting back to other people. And my logic for that was, okay, well, if I do all these things, then during the day, once the kids go to school, I can focus and I can be present on what I actually need to do, which is to create content, edit the content, post the damn content. One thing about me as a content creator is my least favorite part of the job is editing videos. I literally cannot stand it. And it's like still something that I'm working on. But what would happen is I'd film all this content and then not edit it. And then it'd just sit there and I'd be scrambling behind. So my newest thing is now, rather than responding to all those other people, I'm forcing myself to edit content in the morning right away because it's the thing I don't want to do, but it's the most impactful thing to me being a content creator because it allows me to put out more content. So after the Wordle, I usually move right on into content creation and kind of reviewing my day and doing that. And, I've realized that there's more bang for my buck focusing on that than like responding to emails to other people, which is really not an important use of my time.
Yeah. The other two things I'll add in here, I mean, you do work out. We love Kate Sanders. Shout out to Kate. But you go to the gym 4 days a week and you do it very earlier in your day. So you're 6 o'clock to 7.
Yeah. Usually I work out 6 to 7, 4 days a week. Which also definitely adds to me being in a better mood. And it's another frog for me. Like I do like the feeling after I work out, but I definitely don't really enjoy the building up to working out. I can think of a million things I'd rather do. So that is another frog that I'm eating. No offense, Kate.
Yeah, she does love talking to you, Kate, but it's the actual working out. So make her run a little more. One of the things I think that you said is really important is like, so, and everybody's strategy is going to be a little bit different with what they choose to do in different times of their day. But for you, putting some time into work works really well for you. You learn that through trial and error. You found a sweet spot. You're starting your day with some things you really love. You really look forward to your cup of coffee. Pretty much starting at 3 o'clock the day before because you stopped drinking coffee around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're looking forward to that cup of coffee, which is another motivator to get up. You look forward to the Wordle, which is another motivator to get up. And so you've structured your morning with certain things that you look forward to. And there's a lot of science behind leave a little bit. I obviously read a lot in the morning, and I would always look forward to going back to that book and starting it back up. And, that was part of what propelled me out of bed. For you, it's slightly different things. And then clearly you've got, tackle the hardest things that you're going to run into in your day, which for you is some of that editing and going to the gym. Let's shift a little bit since we've sort of exhausted that particular habit.
I have one more thing.
Can
I say one thing? Okay. So if you were to take anything away from me telling you that the most meaningful habit that I have is getting up early, I highly encourage you to explore that. If you are interested, I would suggest with starting a half hour before your family wakes up, whatever time that is. If your family wakes up at 7, you're at 6:30. Vice versa, whatever. Start with that, but do not, this is my big advice, do not copy somebody else's morning routine. You really have to tailor it to what's important to you. I don't care if that means that you're doing crossword puzzles. I don't care if you're reading a book. I don't care if you're online shopping. The whole point is that you're taking time doing something that truly makes you happy, and that personally, in my opinion, should not be something that has to do with your household. Like, don't get up early and fold laundry. Don't get up early and prep people's lunches. You getting up early should be doing something that makes you feel fulfilled and happy as a person. It has to do with nobody else. It's your time. And you will be so pumped that you invested in yourself in that way. And carry on, Chris.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say to that too, and just because it's worth noting, is there are times where you don't wake up at that traditional time. Yeah. And can you just share a little bit of because I know we've trialed and errored this of maybe you sleep in one day, and I don't know, share your thoughts of not sticking to that particular habit and the lessons you've learned by maybe bypassing it and just sleeping in one day.
It sucks so bad. So, okay. Periodically, I wonder if I would feel more fueled and energy throughout the day if I slept longer. That's something that I wonder. I also wonder if, I don't know, you listen to enough podcasts, you're hearing about the importance of sleep and hormones and, yada, yada. Maybe if I slept longer, a couple days a week, I would feel better. That is literally never, ever, ever the case. In fact, I'm furious, and I can speak to that even just the past couple of days. So first of all, me sleeping in, I will say that 9 out of 10 times I end up feeling more tired on those days than I do when I wake up at 4 a.m. And when I say sleep in, we're talking like 6:30, not 10 o'clock, but 6:30 to 7 o'clock may as well be 1 in the afternoon for me. And so sleeping in, I don't feel any less tired. And then I feel like the best part of my day, I just lost it because usually I'm waking up at the same time as everybody else. So my son, Carmine, who's our oldest, he is a hardcore barfer. And every time he has some kind of throwing up incident, it lasts for like days. Chris is dying that I'm bringing up barf on his podcast. It's fine. Anyways, he's been up in the middle of the night, like 2 of the last 3 nights. And I've been woken up multiple times. And I've been sleeping in the morning because I just feel like I need it. And I'm waking up at the same time as everybody else. This morning and yesterday, I barely had a sip of coffee before everybody was on me. And I feel this angst in my chest that I cannot stand. And it's in some ways for me, I occasionally enjoy going off track of my routines because it reminds me how important and how fulfilling they are. And so I absolutely will say that I hate sleeping in because I usually feel irate.
Yeah. And it's a tough one too, because I think, we all have lapses in our positive habits, and it's hard not to judge yourself or beat yourself up. But clearly, like, it happens. Nobody's perfect, whether we're talking about your eating, your workout, or in this case, waking up. But yeah, the reason I wanted to bring that up is I know we've experimented with that from time to time of like, well, how will we feel with a little bit more sleep? And I think I'm right there with you. I think we're more angst throughout the day of like, oh my God, I just lost. All right, let's pivot from habit to like, is there a particular mindset that you have that has really aided in your success or maybe even more your mental health? Is there one that sort of stands out for you?
Yes, there is. This is a little bit newer for me, but I think that I don't have all the answers in life as to what and like I usually know what I could be doing better on, but many times I don't know how. And I'll find myself shifting over and over again, trying to figure something out. And I just can't. And I feel like I'm in this grind of monotony of just like repeating the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different outcome, which I do know is the definition of insanity. And so I would say over probably the past 3 to 4 years, and especially over the last 6 months, I have such a love for podcasts and for audiobooks and researching information and trying to find out if there's things that I'm not doing well, how can I do them better? And not just sitting in that place where you're like beating yourself up because you can't ever get your shit together over whatever the topic is. Maybe it's keeping your house clean. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's your health, that you just can't get it together. I would start picking apart little tiny nuances of that topic and starting to research a different podcast or Googling or trying to do some kind of research on a small part of it so that you can start to do that better, if that makes sense. Does it make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I guess with that in mind, like,
Sorry.
Is that hard? Like, I mean, I know it's something that like you do, but like, is it, yeah, I mean, like, does that come easy for you?
To seek out information that I don't understand?
Yeah, I mean, learning's frustrating. I mean, let's be honest. Like, I mean,
I think when you have something that you don't understand or that you could just do better. Like I'll give you a tangible example because I feel like sometimes that's helpful. So I was a corporate person for 13 years. I reported into a boss. I had tons of expectations with, 16 different locations and all kinds of stuff. Then I was a stay-at-home mom and I had some structure, thank you, Pinterest, to figuring out how like that day would go. The kids kind of dictated that. But over the past, especially 3 years, it's funny because I started off as a stay-at-home mom. I am at home because I work at home, but I am not a stay-at-home mom anymore. I'm a work-from-home mom. And that is very different because, yes, I still have, household expectations, but I never have really leaned into figuring out how to properly manage myself. Like I actually joke around all the time. I wish I had a manager because it's really distracting to work from home. You can easily get caught up in laundry, or I'm going to run to the store. Maybe I'm going to prep dinner. Or actually, I'm going to go get my nails done. Like, there's no accountability to what to do with your time. But I only have so much time because, my kids are at school this period of time. And I found myself squandering my time left and right, like just not getting done what I needed to get done. As much as I like to think of myself as having some discipline, I'm definitely like not as disciplined as you are. And so it was driving me insane because like, I know I have enough time to get done what I need to get done, but somehow I can't get my shit together to do it. So I had to probably live in that frustration for a period of time. And then I'm like, okay, there's probably tons of other people out there who have this problem. That's one nugget there, is if you think you're the only person with whatever problem you have, chances are that is not true. Just spend a little time searching on the podcast app and you'll find out. So I started searching for work from home productivity. I think that's what I typed in. I came across a particular podcast that was specifically geared towards work from home moms, which that's a very unique thing because you're juggling, your household, your kids, working from home, and all these different suggestions on how to bucket your time and your productivity hacks. And I was so inspired because I had never had the information delivered to me in that way, that it wasn't tough. Getting the hang of taking somebody's advice and tailoring it to me can be tough because it's not usually like a carbon copy, but I really enjoy that. Even if it's something like as nerdy as I cannot for the life of me remember to do my nighttime skincare routine. I keep falling asleep. Spend some time on Google. What are some hacks to getting your nighttime skincare routine done so you don't fall asleep? You're going to find things that resonate. You just have to search the information.
What happens when you're struggling? So let's take a tiny detour on this one, because I can imagine there's a number of listeners that will be like, well, that's great. When I'm motivated, when I feel inspired, like, sure, it's not hard to take action. I'm motivated to watch the videos and implement some of the tactics. But I mean, let's be honest. I think we've all been there where we're not motivated to do that, right? We recognize that there's a challenge, whatever that challenge may be. Maybe it's our nutrition, maybe it's our exercise. It could be anything. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate, like, there is this thing that I want to be better at or I want to improve, but I'm not willing to do what you're saying right now, which is like put in the work to find the solution and to implement the tactics. Like, how do you think about it in the moment where you don't have the energy to do it?
I think that is human nature. I know that I'm not a person that's always up and to the right. It's not really my nature. I'm definitely like, you can't see me, but I'm doing like, an up and down kind of motion. I think I'll go up and to the right and then I'll take a dip. Sometimes it's a dip of just sheer exhaustion. Like, I feel like maybe sometimes I go so hard that I can't sustain it, and I'll take a dip. That dip could look like, wearing, my pajamas for 3 days and not working out and possibly, eating a lot of ice cream or something like that. I don't think that those dips are a bad thing, because I think that sometimes the feelings that you have are a good reminder of either the track that you were on was actually a good one and you need to get back there because you don't like the way that you're feeling. And only you know when you're ready to do that. Some people need to wallow in it longer than others. But, I think it's important to, first of all, recognize that ebbing and flowing in your momentum and your enthusiasm for doing all the things, it will ebb and flow. But when you're at your best, what are the things that you're doing that are really, really motivating for you? I know that this sounds very nerdy, but for me, a really, really simple thing is just listening to podcasts. Like, I have a rotation of podcasts that I really like. I find this particular group of people to be really motivating to me. It's almost like a pep talk. And so I know for a fact that even if I'm not ready to take action, if I just take the time to listen to one of my favorite podcasts while I'm folding a load of laundry, that's not hard for me to do because I like them. It is inevitable that within 1 to 2 podcasts, I'm starting to feel inspired of like, okay, I'm ready to like make some change in this direction. I think if I'm just left to myself, it's going to take me a really long time. I think that, they say that it takes a village to raise children. I think it takes a village to raise yourself also. So, maybe it's a podcast for you. Maybe it's going to like a girlfriend or any friend and just like talking through your feelings and realizing that you're not alone, I think can be really helpful.
No, you bring up a good point. We were on the meeting I do with a company today. We were talking about self-discipline, and yeah, I think it's important to recognize, like, in self-discipline, as disciplined as some people can be, whether it's the way that we think about topics, a particular mindset, or even a habit, that there still are steps forward and steps back. And just having, I guess, space and grace to recognize that, like, we're not always perfect all the time. There's different seasons. There's a season could be a week, a month, a year, a decade. Like, we're just going to flow in and out of it, and not being so harsh on yourself, sort of being kind to yourself in a lot of ways is very challenging. I know it's challenging for me. I know it's challenging for you. But I think that's a good perspective. As we sort of get to the last few questions here, I'm curious, is there a particular habit that you wish you had that you don't have, or one that you're trying to develop right now that isn't fully formed?
Yes, there is. I mean, it will probably not sound that interesting, but I still am really trying to work on, when I have a work block of time, being as productive as I can in that period of time, to not feel like I'm scrambling. Because I think, I guess there's so many nuances of my particular job. There's a lot of nuances to everybody's job, but I think it's so easy to just want to like grab the low hanging fruit, to clear the emails, in my case, to clear the emails, to respond to the comments, to do all the little things so that I have a sense of accomplishment. But I do realize at times by doing that I'm not actually moving the mark. So really challenging myself when I am working to focus on the tasks that are going to really maximize the biggest return on my time is still something that I'm trying to work on. So having a better, I guess, workflow when I'm sitting down to work is probably one of the biggest areas that I'm trying to develop right now.
Maybe just leaning into that for a second, what are you doing to develop that habit?
Well, I am listening to what is possibly a very nerdy podcast series by Chelsea Joe. It's called Systematize Your Life. And I'm a big nerd. I love me a good system. And so, she recommends that you block out your time into various segments of your day. So like you might have your AM block, which would be like my morning routine. You've got an evening block, and there's like a block with your kids, and then your work block. My other 3 blocks are like a well-oiled machine. And you live with me, you know that from 5 to 7 p.m., the same things happen over and over. Like we are crushing those 2 hours, and it's like on autopilot. Like my favorite thing is to try to protect the very few brain cells that I have from decision-making fatigue. And I think that somehow my work block is just not very efficient. So I'm listening to like every single podcast she has. I took her advice about like an operating system for your business called Meister Task, which is—
I knew you were going to talk about this
I
here.
love
So
Meister
share
Task.
Meister Task. What is Meister Task?
So it's going to be really hard to share. So, well, she has a course, and I haven't listened to her course yet. Who knows? Someday I will. The thing about Meister Task is it's basically this operating system where you can kind of organize your life however you want to, but that is the exact thing. You can do whatever you want. And so, for instance, I was so excited about this thing, and I set forth all these different projects to help keep me organized. And I tried it for like 2 weeks, and I'm like, okay, there's too many projects. I'm looking at too many different things. I'm overstimulated. I'm shutting down. This isn't going to work. So then then 2 weeks later, I'm like condensing it all into one. Okay, this is better for me. Like it's like a constant tweak. I just have to you have to give yourself something long enough time to develop a cadence to actually see if it's working, but don't be afraid to reel back and be like, okay, this isn't working. How can I tweak it and carry on? It's really painful, honestly, but it's something that's important to me because I have so many things that I want to accomplish, and I have such a finite amount of time that probably my number one goal is how can I be efficient and meaningful with the time that I have? Because when I work, I want to be working. When I'm with my kids, I don't want to be thinking about my work because I mismanage my time throughout the day. And I think that that's a bit of a current struggle of mine, that through getting advice on a podcast and doing some research and giving myself the grace that there is going to be a trial and error period. And this may be something that I'm always working on. That's okay. So long as I know that I'm doing the best that I can to move the needle, I guess.
All right. Well, maybe we'll see that habit on the standard soon then. Is there anyone in particular, if you could see the habits of somebody or see sort of like their better mindsets, is there anybody that comes to mind that you would want to learn from or take a peek at?
Well, this is going to sound really nerdy. Okay, this is going to sound really nerdy, but I do think it's one of the cool things about the standard. She's not on the standard, and who knows what she'd say if we asked her to go on there. But okay, so as a content creator, I'm really inspired by a friend of mine. Her name's Lindsay Silberman, and she is a unicorn to me because she does all the things. So we're both on Instagram and TikTok. I don't think she's on YouTube, but she's on Instagram and TikTok. She runs a really successful blog. Separately, she and her husband also run a luxury candle company, which I know he handles a lot of that, but there's a ton of decision-making stuff that goes on there for her, which I like to think of my parallel to that as like, okay, well, I'm a professional makeup artist. I'm dedicating like 20 to 25 hours a week at peak season to that like leg of my business. And she is so consistent in the way that she's pumping out all this content. Yet somehow, and I know part of her job is she's like a luxury content creator for travel, but she's always on vacation. How is she doing so much and always on vacation? And she never misses a beat. She's so consistent. Now, I will say, and this is another lesson for everybody, is you also have to look at things like, okay, so as much as I can get in my own feelings about like, okay, well, how is Lindsay doing all this stuff? She also does not have children, and I do, which is taking up like a tremendous amount of my time, but it doesn't mean I still can't be enamored with all the things that she is accomplishing. And I would just love to be a fly on the wall to know how she does it all. I think it's really inspiring to see how other people in your own profession, what their habits and their routines are like. And I actually really love that on the standard that you can search for different people's habits and routines by profession. Like if you're a doctor, you can go look at other doctors' habits and routines, which I think is so meaningful because as much as like, I don't know what habits a doctor has, good for them. But like, I'm a content creator. I want to know how are other content creators living their life in a more efficient, meaningful way so I can do that too.
All right. Well, we'll reach out to Lindsay and her team and see if we can help you out there. Before I go to the last question here, is there anything that maybe I've left out that you would want to highlight or share with regards to your habits, your mindsets?
Yeah, I think so. So I already mentioned the word decision-making fatigue, and it is a real thing. Your brain like has a certain amount of decisions that you can make in a day. It could be questions your kids asked you. It could be what's for dinner. It could be what are you going to do with the next hour? Like you're only capable of like handling so much when it comes to that. And I can always tell you, and see, I guess this would be a good question for you if you notice a difference. But for a while by 7 p.m., I was near a tantrum as a person because I was so overwhelmed and tired. And anybody who asked me anything by 7 p.m., I was like panicking because I was so tired. I was spent. I hit the wall. There was no more decisions that my brain could make. And it was just making me kind of angry. I mean, it's the end of the day. I'm allowed to be a little angry if I want to. So for me, I think a lot of people view habits as this unsexy, like you're living your life as a robot. And, I don't want to live like that. Well, that's all how you make of it. I view habits as ways to accomplish what I want to accomplish in a way that doesn't involve me using a lot of brain cells. So if I follow the fact that like, I want to have a healthy breakfast, I want to make my bed, I want to enjoy my cup of coffee, get my exercise done, eat the frog in my business, there's all these things I want to accomplish in the morning. If I do them in the same order, I don't have to think about them. And it's giving me more space in my brain to think about something else. And I think the more you can develop habits and routines for yourself, the less decision-making fatigue you'll have. And I feel like I have made some really good strides in that because I'm not having a tantrum at 7 p.m. Have you noticed that?
It's true.
I'm
It's
not.
true. You've actually changed. Yeah. The last month, 6 weeks, been very different.
It's because the Systematize Your Life podcast. I'm like trying to just find different pockets of I just got really nerdy too. I don't know if you have time for one more. Okay. So another thing that's really fun to look into, if you're gonna be like, wow, you guys are huge nerds. I like how I'm lumping you into it. But another thing I love, love, love is habit stacking, which we haven't really talked about, but okay, so remember the whole what you should do in your morning routine situation. So, you should drink a lot of water, and you have heard it's really good to focus on your breath and like be mindful and practice gratitude and move your body and self-love and self-care and take care of yourself. Well, if you focus on each one of those things individually, you are going to be so tired. That's like so much stuff to do. And I think there's times in my life where I viewed each one of those things as individual to-dos on my checklist. And I have been so overwhelmed that I just want to panic and eat ice cream. And, and I think that there are these little miracle things you come across that you realize you can accomplish a lot of those things at once. For me, and this is very recent, is I've gone back into doing yoga. And yoga is something in the past that I viewed as a bit of a workout thing. And it really, the type of yoga I'm doing now is really like the slow flow. I don't think it's really the world's greatest workout, but I'm stretching my body. I feel like my entire body feels so happy when I'm done. I feel like jello. It is a time where I'm not on tech. I am taking care of it feels very meditative. In fact, I keep crying in yoga, which is really nerdy because I think I'm so happy that I'm like taking care of myself. But anyways, it's meditative. I'm focusing on my breath. It's hot in there. So I'm drinking so much water. At the end, when I have Shavasana, I'm always thinking about gratitude. And when I leave that class for 1 hour, I not only do I feel good, but I've like habit stacked like 7 different things at once. And that's really appealing to me. So I think anytime you can make it more efficient, which is the word of the day, it's very exciting.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. All right, last question. When you think of like maybe taking a step back from like your own personal habits and you think of society at large here and just challenges we run into, and God knows there's plentiful of those. Are there any sort of like particular habits or mindsets that you would hope people adopted for themselves to like nudge us in a more loving and kind direction? Like, is there anything that you would wish upon the world, if you will?
Yeah, for sure. How to say this succinctly. I am also listening a lot to Dr. Becky, who is I think she's a child psychologist. It's another area that apparently I could do some improving on. So we're listening to Dr. Becky, and she has this thing where she calls it your most generous, I think it's your most generous assessment of what's going on with another person who's reacting not very kindly. And so, I mean, this is particularly highlighted for me as a content creator. I get a lot of positive comments, but I also get a lot of vicious comments from people who like to talk some serious shit behind their keyboard. And it's my first instinct is to want to cuss at them and like reply back something super snarky. I mean, I've got like a whole slew of really rude comments in my head that I want to say back to somebody. But if I really take a second or a couple minutes, that is a rule I've made for myself, is if I feel upset by another person's behavior, don't react right away, to take a couple minutes. But what's my most generous assessment? Maybe this person's really unhappy. Maybe they're having a really bad day. Maybe, something bad happened in their life that I'm not privy to that's causing them to react in such a negative way. But I can't control how somebody is behaving, but I can control my own reaction. And so many times I take the approach of I'm just not going to respond to that person, even though that's so tough because all I want to do is cuss them out. That I don't respond back to them because me bringing more negativity isn't going to make our world a better place. So if I can kind of macro away from that for everyone, I think just to treat people with more kindness than you possibly think they deserve, which I think is kind of the definition of grace. Just giving people grace, that the people who are lashing out or who are really angry, we don't know what kind of hardship they're going through. And so if you cannot engage in that and you can just do you and kind of leave the room a better place, whether it's online or in person, and maybe leaving it in a better place is simply not carrying on the conversation, not responding to negativity with negativity, I think would go such a long way, because it's really easy to get involved in online negativity. And it's not contributing any better. So I would say just try to leave the room or the conversation better than it was when you started.
If somebody wants to learn a little bit more about you, where should they go to learn more?
They can go to, I probably would say, my website. So Stefanie, I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, Chris, but
Yep.
my name's Stefanie with an F, StefanieFritzXO.com. You can go to my website, check out all the things. You can email me if you like there, but there's also all the links to my social. My Instagram and my TikTok are both StefanieFritzXO on all the channels. So you can come hang out with me there. I'd love that. I do my best to respond to comments, except for the negative ones, and DMs as often as I can. So I'd love for you to come be a part of my beauty community over there.
Awesome. Well, you have been an amazing first guest for this podcast. Really set the tone for all that we're going to do this season. So thank you for all your time. I really appreciate it. Tell your son he needs to not get involved in these podcasts in the future.
His father around. And hey, Chris, I'm really proud of you for listening to your wife, to starting this podcast, because I know it's going to be a smashing success. You're so passionate about leaving the world better than, it was before you were there. And I'm so inspired and encouraged by all that you are doing. And I can't wait to listen to your upcoming podcast with all your other guests.
All right. Well, that's going to conclude today's episode. Thanks. Thanks for listening to another episode of The Standard. Before we go, click on the link in the show notes of this episode to learn more about today's guest. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who you think can benefit from it as well.